What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Ben Pfeiffer. As always, I have a really special video for y'all today where I am bringing on your favorite internet draft scouts, analysts, YouTubers, whatever you want to say, to talk about their favorite 2026 NBA draft prospects, break them down, do some analysis. This video is heavily inspired by an NFL draft creator named James Foster, who basically did this exact concept for the NFL draft. I love the NFL draft. I love his videos. Please go support him. And I hope that can bring a similar kind of discourse and conversation to the NBA draft space. So without further ado, let's hop into these first two conversations with Brian Gasinger and Antonio Diaz on Patrick Ngongba and Kareem Lopez. As always, likes, comments on and subscriptions would be hugely appreciated. And let's get into it. Brian Geisinger, a contributor at 247 Sports, Basket Under Review, and the Beyond the Buzz podcast covering the Charlotte Hornets, is here to talk about Patrick Ngongba II, Duke sophomore center, his favorite prospect in the 2026 draft, and a guy I like quite a lot as well. So, Brian, why don't you give us the elevator pitch? Why do you like Ngongba so much, and why was he your choice?
Yeah, for me, was not an easy choice. There were definitely a few names I mulled around, but Gong was a guy I've covered up close at Duke for over a season now, and a guy who emerged his freshman season coming off of an injury, missed a lot of time, almost all of his senior year at PVI, and then comes in his freshman season. He's stuck behind Kaman Malawach and Malik Brown in Duke's center room. And but by the end of the season, he really had evolved to being a serious contributor and a guy who's coming into his sophomore season with maybe the appropriate amount of hype. Like I feel like there's a lot of people sort of believing in him, but I don't think you're seeing him projected, inside the top 10 or anything like that. But the pitch for him is pretty simple. Like as offense is coming sort of like more 5-out oriented, as there's a premium being put on centers who maybe not a premium, but just like maybe more interest or more of a draw with centers that can face up, can pass from the high post, can be handoff hubs. Ngongba is very skilled with great size, great power, and a guy who can play facing the basket, can handle the ball, and can kind of like just help open up your offense from the elbow or the high post. And then defensively, I think offensively is sort of like where he's, probably going to draw the most of his buzz. But defensively, I think he's, given his size, he actually moves his feet pretty well. Would not say he's like an explosive leaper, but maybe gets off the floor like a little quicker than you might think. So for Ngongba, just a high post hub, handoff guy, and I think like a genuine hub, but a guy that can face up, run handoffs, can post up, can screen roll, might even be able to pick and pop some this season, but just for a guy with his size and power, moves pretty well, good feel, and again, I would say a high degree of skill too.
Yeah, Ngongba is awesome, and he's gonna be like a draft Twitter spreadsheet nerd favorite. And if we remove the minute restriction, he was 10th in the country last year in box plus minus as a freshman, which is very, very impressive. The only other freshman in that list, of course, was his teammate Cooper Flagg. Incredible efficiency, blocked a bunch of shots, was just great from everywhere, especially on the interior. But the thing that pops to me most about Ngongba, like, I can't remember many players his age with that kind of strength. He is legitimately impossible to move. Like you watch other upperclassmen centers try to back him down, and it just like doesn't happen.
Yes, I mean legit 6'11", 250 pounds. And I mean, you could see like Duke took advantage of it offensively. Like this was not for most of the season. I would say for like 2/3 of the season, Cooper was sort of like the one guy they would throw it into in the post last season. They would sort of like run these, back screens or cross screens to get, Cooper into the low block. And then once Pat was healthy enough to play and sort of carved out a spot in the rotation, that started becoming an after timeout type deal for Duke, where they would just old school, 90s basketball cross screen into a post up for Pat, and he's got the strength to displace guys. And then as you know from watching him too, like the touch to finish, with a hook shot too. So just a really nice combination of strength and touch, and for a guy who isn't by no means is a plotter, like has good movement, has good feet, and yeah, really good hands too. Just again like a really good target down in that low block area, and his strength for him. I think especially as he starts to like get better at holding his contact on screens, not just like immediately slipping out, is going to help him in that regard too, as sort of like a downhill roller or a short roll player this season.
For sure. I think consistently applying his physicality is gonna be key. I watched the Wake Forest game, the at Wake Forest game. It was Heisman game of the season this morning, and he was just like slipping every screen, not making contact. But there's
Mhm.
other games I've seen where he just mashes guys on screens all the time. And the other thing I like about Gongba is he just seems to play with a bit of an edge and is a bit of a heel. He gets under players' skins. He'll chirp at another player and kind of instigate like them to do a technical foul or something like that. I think that really fits well with just his play style and the combination to me of strength and passing vision. Like there was that one pass I clipped from the scrimmages where he was like falling out of bounds and he like whipped it across the court to someone. I
Mhm.
think it was Isaiah Evans for a three. And yeah, his passing is honestly insane. And I kind of wanted to ask you what you thought or what you think of his role and usage this year at Duke. Obviously, it's going to be another very good Duke team, but it's going to look very different than it did last
Mhm.
year. So, what are you anticipating in terms of, I guess, both sides? But I was more thinking like his offensive usage, offensive role at Duke this year, and how maybe it's going to expand.
Yeah, I think like outside of the point guard position and sort of like how that shakes out for Duke, Pat's usage is sort of like it's just sort of like how where he's stationed and sort of like how much they ask him to do in terms of initiation is kind of like going to be the most interesting thing with Duke from like a half court offensive perspective this season. I think Duke has in general just a fascinating mix with Pat, Cam Boozer, Malik Brown, and Nick Kamenia. They've got these four guys that are 6'8", 6'9", or taller that can face up and handle, dribble, shoot, pass. To me, Duke really does strike me as a team that's going to like initiate a lot. A lot of like five out, a lot from the elbows, and a lot with those guys sort of facing the basket and picking out cutters and getting into handoff actions and zoom actions, that kind of stuff. Um, Pat's such a like I think his passing is fun because he can do a lot of different stuff with it. Like he can pass on the move on the short roll, he can face up, he can pick out cutters. Like one of his best traits, some of the late season action when they were kind of giving him, in the ACC tournament or the NCAA tournament, when Malik Brown's out, they're giving him a little bit more of a role, and you could see his ability to like face up either at the top of the key or at the elbow, and just perfectly timed, cutters, guys slipping screens. So as far as his role goes, like if you've watched Duke's offense, and I wrote about this, I talked about this a lot last season. Like Duke sets up and orients this five out offense very similar to sort of like what Will Hardy does with the Utah Jazz. And instead of having the center in that those five out sets, like in the middle of the floor with two guards and two wings on each side, they like to space. Duke likes to play the center on that left wing area, right? And then they usually have in the middle trailer spot, like they're sort of like jumbo playmaker. So it was Cooper a lot last season. My guess is it'll be Cam Boozer a lot this year. And then from that sort of like wing extended area where Gongba sets up, he can do a bunch of different stuff. He can get into 4 or 5 pick and roll with Cam Boozer right there. There's when
Oof.
that little
Oh my
bump pick and roll.
goodness.
They can throw it to Gongba at that wing area. He can get into dribble handoff out of the corner with Isaiah Evans. You can run zoom action off of that, try to get Caden Boozer coming into a dribble handoff. You can run split cuts off of that. And so to me, he strikes me as someone who's going to be heavily involved from like a play initiation standpoint. I mean, I think Caden Boozer is really set up to sort of like grab the reins and run with the offense as like a floor general this season. But I think Gongba is going to get a ton of play initiation stuff. And one of the really fun things that if you watched any of the scrimmage from scrimmage film from about a month ago at the
Which they're
practice
on
they
YouTube, and you should. They're
yeah,
awesome.
very fun. But they also like one of Duke's go-to plays last season was this like wide side, left side of the floor, wide pin down screen with Malawach. Come on, Malawach would set it for Khan Knipple, and Khan would curl, and Kaman would roll to the rim, and they would sort of like snap into these 2-on-1s off of that action. Well, in the scrimmages, they were running that obviously with Isaiah Evans, and they got a little nice, screen roll, screen dive score off of that. But they also had Pat setting down screens for Cam Boozer. And so that's going to be, I think, another sort of like fun way to get those guys involved in actions this season. I'm sure teams will try to switch that, but there also are going to be a lot of opposing fours in the
Yeah, what do you think
ACC.
of Pat's handle? Like, do you think he can get to the point where he can beat switches like that? Because he certainly has the strength to
Yeah.
theoretically create advantages off the dribble.
I think potentially
Like,
like
his
he's
handle
got
is good for a big in a hub role, but I don't know.
yeah, I don't know if he's quite like just like automatic face up. I mean, I think he's much more comfortable sort of like back to the basket, but he does have the like fake handoff and
Mm.
keep. And in the scrimmage too, he got a little pick and pop action, shot fake, and then dribble drive and got a foul at the rim. So I don't know if he's just going to be like a guy that gets 3 or 4 ISO possessions per game or something like that. But I think it's going to be something that you're going to see him do at times this season, especially if they are going to like continue to run offense through him in those 5-out looks, because some of those, whether it's off of a dribble handoff or just sort of like, Pat's reading the defense leaning in the direction of the guy coming off of a down screen or into a handoff or whatever, he can just tuck it in and try to drive to the rim. And I think he's coordinated enough to do that. So yeah, I think that's going to be a part of it, but I think they're going to try to I think they'll be like a little bit more selective about where those situations come from and how they're derived.
For sure. And Ngongba is a fascinating offensive player. I think he's very versatile, which I like a lot. Wanted to hit on his defense a little bit. We touched on it a bit earlier. What do you envision him like doing on defense in the NBA at the highest level? Because like we said, he's a very good rim protector, but I don't know if he's like a primary rim protector. I think he's pretty mobile and switchable for a
Mhm.
5, but for a 4, he's definitely not there yet, like technique wise. I think his
Mhm.
physicality and his strength is always going to give him a place, but I'm not super sure yet where that place is. So, just what are your thoughts on where he might land on defense?
No, I think this is sort of like the question to try to to analyze and think about with him coming into the season, and certainly as it progresses, is sort of like what role can he be defensively? Because I think offensively he can do a lot of stuff and really be like a player and stay on the court and just help out a team, But defensively, can he anchor a defense? I think it's really going to come down to like how does he handle drop coverage, right? Because like that's more than likely like that's what he's going to be tasked with playing at the NBA. Duke mostly played him in drop coverage last season. My guess is you'll see a lot of that this year as well. But he's also pretty good at like staying in drop coverage, and then if the ball handler like takes the ball deep enough into the paint, they can do that little like veer switch where he'll step up, take the guard, and it'd be Sion James or whomever would sort of veer off and get the center on the roll, so he can navigate that stuff. They have used him up at the level. They used him in hard hedging. He doesn't, he has good hands in those
Yeah,
situations
Duke
when
is
you're sort of
never afraid to just like send their bigs out and switch and
the,
hedge and do all that stuff, which I like honestly. It
yeah.
throws them into the fire.
I mean, like I've talked with John Shire about this. Like he really does. He doesn't want the offense to like know what's coming every time down the court. Is he does want to be able to like have Duke's the fives, mix it up, throw different stuff. And so even over the course of a game I thought one of my favorite things about Malawach last season was that like he would nail like 2 or 3 different coverages in the span of one possession.
The
And
one against was it Pitt or Notre Dame? He had one. It was one
Yep.
of those games where he
It was
just
the Notre Dame game. It wasn't like he was like perfect. Like Marcus Burton, cooked him a few times, but he was doing stuff where he would switch, and then they'd send Braden Shrewsbury like on a guard to guard ghost screen, and he would hit that, and he was just doing all kinds of different stuff. It was really like encouraging, I thought, from him in that. But I think Pat, his hands are good, so he can handle stuff on the glass. He can be like a little bit of a pest when he's having to play sort of that middle ground in drop coverage. Like he's got long arms, and again, I think good quick hands too. certainly not like the best in terms of ground coverage, and he's not gonna. I think his rim protection is like good. It's adequate. I think it's maybe passable for the next level. But this is not
Yeah.
an elite, an elite rim
He
protector
has
too.
some really impressive blocks. Like he had the catch block against one of those North Carolina
Mhm.
games where he just like snagged the ball out of the air. But I definitely agree the defense could be a potential limiting factor. With that, I want to ask you. So at the moment, we kind of alluded to it earlier. How high, if you had a board, or we're trying to kind of gauge it based on past drafts. How
Mhm.
high would you take Ngongba at this point, or I guess just based on your projection of what you think his season's going to look like?
Yeah, I don't have a 26 board yet. That's something I'll start to put together more throughout the season. If I had to guess, like I would say Pat somewhere in the uh 20 range, top 20, top 25, somewhere in there, sort of like maybe back half, back third of the first round. But like if the defense, if he's more mobile this season defensively, and like if he's hitting threes, and you can see he's like clearly flirting with a pick and pop three this offseason, which is something we didn't see from him last year. Well, then maybe there's some pathways for him sort of like to jump and maybe get more even closer to the middle of the first round, or late lottery or something like that. At the moment, that feels a little too rich. So I'd probably say like, top 20, top 25 for
I
Gongba.
I have him in my lottery right now because I
Okay.
like to be bold preseason.
I'm with it,
He
man. He's
really just has
awesome.
such a unique combination of skills that I think could kind of lend to a high ceiling. So, last
Mhm.
question for you. What do you think Gongba's realistic NBA ceiling looks like? Whether you have a comparison or like All-Star,
Cool.
All-NBA, a player ranking level, just what his impact looks like at the highest level. So just how basically at his ceiling, how good you think he's going to be, and like how realistic is getting to that ceiling?
Yeah, I think he can be a starter level player, for a long time in the NBA, sort of like with the best side of the floor being on the offensive side, but being like giving you enough mobility, enough rim protection, and enough rebounding to sort of like be passable, and to sort of like hold his own on that side of the floor, and not be like a sort of like sieve. Like I don't think he's going to be a guy that you necessarily have to like there's certain fives, or like a guy like Sengun, who's obviously an outstanding player, very very skilled offensively, but maybe you have to be like sort of thoughtful in terms of like roster construction around him, and what are your fours and your wings sort of like looking like, and maybe you'll need to do a similar thing with Gong, but I think for the most part he can sort of like blend in on that side of the floor. And then offensively, like if he's hitting his higher as some of his sort of like higher outcomes on that side in terms of like development curve, I think he's a guy that like he's not going to be just like a sit in the dunker spot, and lob guy. Like you're going to put the ball in his hands, and let him be a guy that can face up at the elbow or face up atop the key, run high post actions through. So yeah, maybe if that's the case, like if he's a plus offensive center, and like is can hold his own defensively, then he probably should be a lottery pick. But I kind of want to see him. I want to like make sure I want to see him stay healthy. Obviously he had like I think it was this foot was the thing that was bothering
And
him.
he's had injuries
His
dating back to his AAU and youth career as
So
well.
that's the thing that does concern me a little bit with
Yeah,
him, just given how
me
much
too.
size and bulk he's legit 250. And so just like I want to see him stay healthy and play a ton of minutes this season. And if he does that, I think
Yeah.
I feel pretty confident in bumping him up and feeling like he's a guy that can start in the league, and be a guy that can give you some offensive play creation. And obviously, if he adds the three, then that even increases his odds of sort of like finding success. I don't think he needs it, but it would be like an important piece for him to add this year as well.
Yeah, with a cleaner injury history, I could honestly see myself getting like top 10 with
Yeah.
Ngongba, but that definitely is scary for, like you said, a guy who plays a lot of force. And I think at his best will need to be as mobile as he realistically can be. But yeah, I mean, I think he has real two-way upside with
Mhm.
obviously majoring in offense as, like you said, a creator on the ball, but also a great play finisher. So,
Mhm.
Brian, any last words, any other thoughts you want to get off on Ngongba, or any last things that you wanted to say before we finish up?
The last thing I would say, I was just circling back to, I'm really excited to see sort of like how Duke orients its offense this season. I think there's a lot of I think there's a lot of stuff they can borrow from the last couple of seasons in terms of like Gongba's usage, just seeing what they did with him last season, seeing some of the stuff they did with Kyle Filipowski a couple of years ago, who now plays a similar role in Will Hardy's offense with the Jazz currently, and had a nice rookie season. And so just I'm really excited to sort of see like where Pat's playmaking ceiling is. And I think he's a guy that can really, really help out, whether it's Caden Boozer or a guy like Dame Sarr, who I kind of like as a cutter too. I think his handoff chemistry with Isaiah Evans was pretty good last season in limited minutes. So I'm sort of excited to see just like how much he can sort of like help make other guys around him better on offense this season. I think that would be kind of like a cool thing to track throughout the year. But going to be a team, tons of prospects on this roster, with Cam leading the way, but Pat is going to be time player for them this season, and just needs to stay healthy.
Antonio Diaz, head scout at Eurohoop Scouting Service and a scouting associate for the Mexico City Capitanes, the G League affiliate in the Mexico City, is here to discuss Kareem Lopez, Mexican forward out of the NBL. Antonio, why don't you tell us why Kareem Lopez was your choice and why you enjoy him so much?
Hey man, thanks for the invite to be here.
Of course.
I like to call Karim like the silent assassin. Like you look at him and he's never talking, he's never communicating. He's always silent. He's always there, like in the corner, trying to get a feel for the game, and then all of a sudden he can just catch the ball and go. And he's pretty good at attacking. I think it's the most translatable skill for him. It's the off the catch driving and ability to get to the rim. He finished at 58% at rim last season as an 18-year-old in his first year in a professional league, so that's pretty good. And he finished at 69%. These are numbers from that I took from Instat, but 69% at the rim off catch and drive. So it's pretty good at that. Like he gets real low to the ground. You see him like getting past any type of player, like big, a smaller guy on him. He just gets there. And then his way of finishing, especially when he goes to the right, he can protect the shot really well with his left shoulder. He can give us some highlights. He doesn't like jump out the gym right now, but he can get up there at times. So I like that type of wing. So a 6'8", 6'9" wing that can do that. It's a really good bet in the NBA for sure.
Yeah, Lopez, I'm pretty much on the same page with you. I've really enjoyed Kareem Lopez. I think he's an awesome driving prospect. I was going to ask you what your kind of one thing with him is. If you're going to sell Kareem Lopez to someone who doesn't know anything about him, you'd say just his general driving ability. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the driving ability, especially off the catch, right? I don't think he is right now a shot creator in an NBA sense. I think he doesn't do anything bad in the court. Like he's a good offensive player. He's a good offensive player. He has some stuff to iron out for sure. He's not elite at anything besides that off the catch drive. So that's the thing I think people will look at and then try to go from there. Like the shot will come, the defense will come as well because there is some stuff to change there. But the off catch stuff is the thing that I would get people to watch first, just because it's really interesting to see. Just because he can go for layups, he can go for floaters at time, he can go for dunks, and it doesn't do it just in the open court. Like he can do it in the off court. He can just all of a sudden he's at the rim and you don't even notice it.
Obviously, it was a small sample last year in the NBL. I might have talked about this once or twice, but Lopez was like a
Yeah.
comically efficient driver. Nobody in this draft class even comes kind of close to his efficiency, and it was only on like 50 something drives, so we take it with a grain of salt. But he is such a crazy driver, and Lopez is going to be 19.2 on draft night in 2026. He is the seventh youngest player in my top 60, so that's obviously a great sign. And his combination of like polish and athleticism for his size is really special and pretty rare to me. like you said, he's not a crazy nuclear explosive athlete, but I think he's a pretty good athlete. Nothing crazy, but he is an NBA
Yeah,
athlete, and he has more footwork and handling and just skill as a scorer than you'd expect at that age. The play I always think of, and of course he's great in the half court, but in transition, I think it was against Hyunjung Lee. He had a behind the back and then a euro stepped the other way and finger rolled it in. And that's one of those plays you just like watch on a highlight tape and it's like, oh wow, this 6'8", 18-year-old wing is just a really impressive driver. And Lopez, like you said, is definitely a complimentary player at this stage. That's fine. He's an 18-year-old in a pro league. 18.6 usage rate according to Real GM. The other issue with him as a as a or potential issue with him as a complimentary and on ball player throughout the years as he develops is his 3-point shooting. So I was curious to see, Antonio, what you make of his jumper. Last season he was at 2.5 attempts per game, 30.4% from three, 74.2% from the free throw line. What are your thoughts on Kareem Lopez as a shooter? Because I have some thoughts, but I'm curious what you make of him now and like how kind of worried or what level of concern or optimism you have for that developing in the way it needs to for him to thrive in his role at the next level.
yeah. So I thought it would be a bit more developed right now. I watched him at the Paris AMGT 2 years ago. He was looking pretty good with his shot, but there are some stuff that I think helps him. Like he was a 30.4, I think that you said, 3-point shooter, but he was 35% of the catch. So that's the shot for him right now. That's the shot for him. You see when he's creating with the ball, or even with some movement shooting, he's not balanced. He's still thinking about what he has to do. The shot comes up short for most of the time, just because he doesn't have the necessary strength to go up after the dribble. Um, but the catch and shoot stuff is starting to get there. I don't think he's going to be like a world class shooter. I don't think that's his game. But someone that can hit the open shot when it's there. He's not going to be like a high volume shooter as well. So staying in that, like going into the NBA and being like 3, 4, even 5 attempts per game kind of guy, off the catch is pretty good for him. And if he can keep at the 35, 34, 36, 37, I think it's pretty good for him. I don't think he's going to be like, again, a world class shooter or elite shooter or anything else. But he can do something when the time to shoot comes, for sure.
Yeah, my vision for Lopez is kind of just good enough to draw closeouts, like you said, because he is such a ridiculous closeout driver. I feel like
Yeah.
I'm honestly okay enough with his shooting projection long term, just because he's really large and can maybe play the four. I don't think has to be an incredible shooter to be a great player. Lopez, like you said, was willing to take some basic movement threes. Like if you send him off a flare screen and nobody guards him, he'll set his feet and he'll take the shot.
Yeah.
And I think his willingness to take shots off the catch definitely like waxes and wanes. There's some games I watched where he just like is willing to take threes off the catch confidently, and there's some where he's passing them up. He's not doing anything overall, but I definitely think it's not a super strong area of concern. And that is another thing I like about Lopez that you mentioned. Like his 3-point shooting is but I think it's pretty understandable long term. I think his passing I feel similarly about, where it seems like to me he's a pretty solid passer at times. I don't think he's a black hole by any means, but
Yeah.
there's clearly a ton of work he can do. And honestly, like as a ball handler too, like the flashes are awesome of his ability to string together moves and use his strength and physicality to score. But like gonna have to get his ball control is gonna have to get a lot better.
Yeah, I think if he can, I think the better projection for him, the top projection, I would think, like if he can get to a secondary ball handler, that's cool. I don't know if he's gonna get there. It's gonna be more like an off-ball wing, again, going after the catch, trying to hit some open shots. Sometimes he's gonna get the opportunity to play some pick and roll or attack, and then give a one or two moves to a defender in his way and try to finish. But I don't think he needs to be like, not everyone has to become a shot creator to be in the league. Like you have to feel your role, and if his role is to play more off the ball and attack of the catch and shoot off that, and also the way he goes for offensive rebounds as well. He's pretty good at going after them. I think he can get better at that, just winning his position, because he's always there at the offensive rebounds, but he doesn't catch that many. And then like that's that. I think if he can get to a secondary role, that's awesome. I don't think he's going to get there, but if he's going to be like an off-ball wing, that's pretty good for him. And if he gets to a good level on the defensive end, like that puts him at a pretty good. I think at the range that you have him, I think that's a pretty good player.
I was gonna ask how you thought of his defensive projection because at this stage, like very athletic wing who has some moments, but I'd say is pretty inconsistent on defense, as most
Yeah.
18-year-olds are. Don't know how much there's to like take away from that. What do you view as his ceiling on defense? How good do you think he can become, and do you think that's like a realistic thing for him to reach?
I've seen some people talking about his defense. I'm not as high on his defense. Like I saw some people calling him a probable like all defensive team. I don't think he gets there. I think he's a good wing defender. I think he can switch sometimes to guards. I don't think he can be like a point of attack defender all the time or stuff like that. Just because I don't trust like his hip movement, his hip flexibility, his ankle as well. He can move laterally, but when he has to turn, like the things that he has to do to turn, that it takes some time for him. I like his off ball defense. I think with his athleticism, he can block shots at the rim. He can pressure some rollers as well. He has a good base on him. The lower body, I think, is gonna get stronger. It is strong enough right now to switch sometimes to bigs and stay in front of them and not be bullied inside. I think it's gonna be like a defender who can switch, who can be everywhere, who can cover space and come up with some secondary rim protection, some blocks, some passing lane defense, but not specialist defender you're gonna put in the POA or stuff like that. It's not gonna be like a POA defender or all the time guarding a big. It's just gonna be a versatile defender that gonna be able to do a lot of stuff.
Lopez notched about a 4% block rate last year in the NBL, which is excellent for a wing. 4.4% the year before, and then 4.9% in 2023. This is a consistent thing with him. I'd say that's also probably my favorite thing I saw about Lopez's defense. And I'd agree with the projection that I view him as a very good defensive prospect, but probably not a special one because of some of the mobility issues and like quick change of direction. His like ground coverage and off-ball defense, though, really impressive. Like he can make some long rotations to protect the rim. Some of his plays where he closes out to a shooter, quickly recovers and gets back to the man are like really, really impressive. And like you said, there's some really good moments where he switches, but at the moment, like he's kind of just like a technical mess. Like he makes so many mistakes, like calling off
Yeah.
ball switches. And I think his feet are all over the place on the ball. And his motor to me isn't always as high as I'd like it to be, but like I don't have concerns. I think it's very common for players like Lopez who are very physically talented and have good flashes to improve at the minutia of defense as they age. I think it's hard for those guys to become like elite, special, high-end defenders. I wouldn't project Lopez to be that. But speaking of projections, first of all, how high would you take Kareem Lopez in the 2026 NBA draft? Obviously, it's early, but just at this stage, what kind of range are you thinking about for Lopez?
Yeah, so I don't have like much information on all the guys. I mostly studied the international guys, and all of them are going over to
Or just
over
like
to the
relative
US.
to past draft
Um,
and international prospects, like
yeah,
what level do you
yeah,
think?
but I think in the range that you said, like you said, you have him seventh. I think top 10 maybe. If the season doesn't go as well, he can go lottery. I don't think he's gonna drop that much from there. He's probably gonna go up a bit just because he starts the season before anyone else. So if he starts well, like he's gonna be in the top 5 to start the season. And then if he can keep that. Maybe it can get to a top 5, but I would say like 6 to 10, and if the season doesn't go well, like 11 to 14, 15.
Yeah, I don't see that big of a range for Lopez. I don't feel very confident about a lot of the players at the top of this draft in their floors, especially. But Lopez, I think I feel pretty good. It's always risky with these like lower minute players. Like we saw Rocco Zakarski in 2024, like
Yeah.
dominate in a lower minute role and then really regress when he, was tabbed to be a starter or a higher minute player. Lopez played more than Zakarski did his first year in the NBL and was a year older, but it is always a concern with these guys. I do agree with you. I view him as like a mid-high lottery pick who I think has the potential to be the fourth or fifth pick after the big three. And the last question that I'm going to ask you, that I'm going to ask everyone, what do you view as Lopez's ultimate NBA ceiling? And then maybe more of a realistic ceiling. So how high do you think Lopez can be in terms of, and you can frame this however you want. You can give a comparison if you want. You can say, all-star, all-NBA, whatever impacts. Just what do you see as Lopez's, realistic NBA ceiling?
Yeah, I don't think he gets to like all-star, maybe one appearance, just in a like everyone is injured and he gets there. I think he's gonna be like a playoff performer just because he's so versatile. He can defend. He can attack. Like you saw with the Indiana Pacers this year. Like the more versatility that you have, the more you're gonna play. Like Neesmith kind of role, more capable of getting to the rim, maybe less about the outside shot. But I think that's his ceiling, the realistic ceiling. Like we talked about being secondary, and if he can be a secondary, maybe he gets to be more of an all-star. I don't think that's pretty realistic. That's in a like the best way possible. So I would think um, just like a playoff performer, a guy that you can trust to play 20 to 30 minutes in a playoff game for sure.
That's a valuable player, and I really do
Yeah.
agree. I'm sure in some of these we'll have more disagreement, but I pretty much agree with everything you're at. I'm high on Lopez. He seems like to me a player who could maybe like not actually make an all-star game, but like have all-star level impact, be one of the 30 or 40 most impactful players in any given season. Like you said, because of the versatility. He's going to be a guy who I think fits well on good teams because his defensive upside is impressive. We talked about the off catch attacking. You're probably not drafting Lopez to be like a primary offensive star. Who knows? Maybe like his driving is that crazy that's like at his tail tippy top of outcomes, but probably not realistic. So anyway, thank you very much, Antonio, for your time. Any last words to the people or any last things you want to say about Kareem Lopez that we didn't touch on?
Just gear up and try to watch as many minutes as you can to start the season, just because you're going to be watching as many college games as you can from November to April. So just start watching Kareem, and you'll see like a really good player. And I would say try to focus on the off catch stuff, just because you can see little things that you can then project to the NBA, and you see why we're talking so highly about his driving off the catch for sure.